Hello guys, welcome to all of you in Code Tpoint. My name is Amit and today we are going to continue with Python learning series. In this tutorial, we are going to cover loop in Python. So what is loop? So we can say that is any task that we supposed to perform again and again. So we can say that loop is a control structure that allow us to perform a repeatedly task over and over again, or if the condition is getting met, right? There are two categories of loop inside the Python. One is for loop and another is while loop. So we can say that whenever we know that how many times we need to perform this task, or when we know that number of iterations to be performed, then we call or then we use for loop. When we do not know the number of times the iterations will be performed, but we know the conditions, in that case we will use while loop. It is one of the very essential topic while using the program. So let's go and start using this piece of the code in Python programming and let's see how it works. So I'm going to Jupyter Notebook and here I'm going to start with loop in Python. As discussed, loop is a repeated task that we need to perform again and again. So I'm going to start with very basics level of one example where we can use loop. For example, if you want to print 1 to 10, that means all the numbers including 1 and 10 over the screen, then how we are going to do that? So I'm going to just write the name of the task, what we are going to do. We need to print all the numbers from 1 to 10. Okay. Now let's say in this case, the logic is first we need to print 1, then we need to print 2, then we need to print 3, and then we need to print 4 and so on. So we can understand that is in every single step, my number is getting increased by 1 and my loop is getting performed from 1 to 10. So the task we are going to perform is increasing the number again and then print it. Increasing the number again and then print it. So this is a repeated task. Okay. And that is called a loop structure. Since we know that is how many times it is going to perform the task or the iteration we know. So it is going to perform 10 times. That means 1 to 10. And here we will increase the number by 1. So we can say that is in this case we will use the for loop. Sorry. In this case we will use the for loop. So I'm going to write for. The structure is start with for. So for is like inception of loop. I in range 1, 11 and then colon. I will explain this entire line. For is a inception of loop. I is a iterator. So that help us to perform the iteration. Range, you can say, is a iterable object on which we will perform the iterations. So we can say that is whenever we have to use the loop, we need a iterable object so that we can perform our iterations task. Since the range will be start from 1, but it is not going to touch the last number. That is why in this case what we have done, we have taken one extra number or added one more number just to reach the 10. Because in the range if we will take 1 to 10, it will be go to 1 to 9. It will not going to reach on 10th number. So in this case we need 1 to 10 and that is why we have increased the last number by 1. Now what we are going to do, we need to print 1 to 10. So simply what we are going to write, print I. correct? Since I is my iterator, so it will be going to travel on this iterable object, and it will be start from 1 and it is going to end on 10. And in this case, it will be increase the every single step by one number. So let's execute this piece of the code and see how it looks like. Okay, so it is giving us output 1 to 10. Let's say we would like to get this output in a horizontal. So what we are going to do it, we are going to use end, correct? And then let's say execute this piece of the code. Then we are getting the output in horizontal line. So here are very important concepts inside the loop. First is iterator, second is iterable, and third is iterations. I will explain all these things in a very detail. But yes, in this case, just understand that is whenever you start writing the code of for loop, first is iterator, second is iterable, and the third is iterations. Okay, these three are very important components or the concepts inside the loop. Let's say if I am going to print, the table of 5. So this time we need to print the table of 5, correct? So how we can perform this task? Again, we are going to write for I in range 1 comma 11 and followed by colon, and once you press the column it will shift a one indentation space towards right, and from that point we can start our statement. What we are going to write? Print 5 into I, correct? And this is our output, correct? So let's execute this piece of the code. So what we are getting? The table of 5, correct? For example, if you want to create the table of any number, so how we can improve this piece of the code? Simply, I'm just copying this piece of the code and putting it over here. Now this time what I'm going to use, I'm going to take a prompt values. So let's say a equal to int input, and in this case enter a number, correct? And I will replace 5 with a. In this case, we can create the table of any number. So let's say this time we are going to create a table of 10. So you can see we are getting the table of 10, right? I hope you can able to understand for loop. Now let's go and understand what is while loop. So while loop you can understand if we do not know the number of iterations, but we know the condition. Okay. In that case, we will use while loop. For example, if you are going to print 1 to 5, but my condition is if my iterator find that a condition which is, let's say I is 5, that means those cases can be able to handle or how many times it is going to execute it. So let's go and use this piece of the code. Okay. Since I have just written over here one condition over here, one example, very good example over here. So let's say in this case, we are going to use a while conditions over here, while loop over here, and through that, we have given a conditions. So let's say we are going to use this simple piece of the code. And in this case, I'm just copying this code, and let's say I am going to execute this code only so that we can start with. So I'm going to use once again. And so what is happening? Let's say the count is start with 0. While count is less than 5, then print count, and the count is getting increased by one number, right? So let's say we are going to use this piece of the code. Sorry. Okay. In this case, let's say what I'm going to use. Yeah. And you can say while a while we are when we are going to use while loop structure, so while is putting a conditions, the condition is when the count is less than 5, then what will happen? So we would like to print 1 to 5, but if the count is less than 5, then only we can able to print. So the how what we are going to print is 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. If I'm going to change this number, so let's say less than equal to 5. In that case, what will happen? It is going to print 0 to 5. Correct? This is also a very important case when we need to understand, that is, if we do not supply the condition, then what will happen? In that case, your loop will be keep continuing and it will be not never ending loop. You can try, since in this case the condition is very very important when you are going to use while loop. If you do not supply the condition, then your while loop will be keep iterating and it will be never ending process. So this is very important and essential. Whenever we use while, we can use conditions. I hope you have understand this loop in Python. So hope you have enjoyed this session. If you have any queries, feel free to ask these questions and I will try to respond it. Thank you guys. Thank you once again.